Hey beautiful people, Leticia here, coming to you from beautiful High Park on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I hope you've all had a great week, despite all the craziness that continues to be being pushed on us to a great extent by the mainstream media. And I wanted to say a few words about that. And number one, you may have heard in recent days this increasing push to defund the police, defund police departments, because, well, one group of police officers did something wrong and all of a sudden all police officers are criminals and we need to defund the police. I'm certainly not in favor of any kind of police state, including massive funding for the police. However, something is off here, guys. Somebody told me don't say guys so much, and I know it's almost a verbal tick. I need to be more conscious of my words. But again, we in recent months, thanks to Corona, we've had criminals being allowed out of jails, including rapists. The state of New York in particular. Somebody's saying it wasn't even real. Yeah, I've also come to believe the George Floyd event was a staged event. Absolutely, I'm with you. I'm at a point where I doubt very much whether he even died, but that's besides the point. So again, I've already discussed this in some of my earlier videos that the whole George Floyd incident was in all likelihood a staged event, and it was meant to incite particularly the type of riots we're currently seeing in the streets. It was really meant to justify what I've also come to believe are planned riots, planned large-scale protests. Look, I get that there are genuine people concerned about racial inequality and racial tensions, including when it comes to police and policing of criminals, okay? Whether black, white, but in particular the white policing on black perpetrators is what's getting all the attention right now. And by the way, guys, there have been black activists and people who have spoken out against the hypocrisy in this whole narrative, because as it turns out, the majority of the crime being perpetrated, at least in the US, is actually black on black. There's a lot more black on black crime versus white on black. And the police has been equally guilty of killing innocent or unarmed white civilians as they have been of killing, black civilians. So we are being sold a certain narrative, and it's getting a lot of media attention, and it seems our governments are all in favor of it. The media is saying, well, yeah, people should be allowed to protest. This is a great injustice. I'm not, obviously an injustice was committed, or it appeared to be committed. Again, that incident got a lot of media attention. However, it does not explain the insane large-scale protests we are seeing literally all over the world, from Australia to Holland, you name it, literally all over the world. And once again, the hypocrisy of the media and our legislatures who, are not condemning these people for protesting, taking to the streets. However, when concerned citizens were taking to the streets in defense of our freedoms, we are being labeled inconsiderate. You don't care about grandpa and grandma. It's so hypocritical. So those of us with eyes to see really need to see what's going on, and not fall into their false narratives that are literally being pushed on us top down, with the assistance of mainstream media, with the assistance of our elected representatives, who are doing a very poor job of currently representing the people. And By the way, guys, when it comes to the whole Black Lives Matters movement, I told you that I had watched a video from a former organizer who has stated that the movement had been infiltrated. I think it's beyond infiltrated. It turns out that George Soros funds Black Lives Matter to a great extent, just like he funds Antifa. I've not done my own research on this. David Icke released a video saying that, George Soros had donated some $30 million to Antifa. I don't know if that was last year. Anybody can do their own research on that. But you got to wonder, this is obviously a very well-organized global organization. Somebody's funding these groups. They're not just grassroots organizations that are getting this much media attention, and they have the power to pull in thousands and thousands of people with the same narrative. Could it be a grassroots movement of that scale? I have to wonder. I really have to wonder. I think there's big money behind these movements. George Soros, a lot of people have looked into him, and just like Bill Gates seems to have the whole vaccination agenda, he's the main, the frontman for the vaccine movement, and let's vaccinate the whole world. This Soros man, apparently, in his philanthropic efforts, he's been actually funding a lot of these divisive social movements, which have the appearance of being very progressive. There is, we really need to think for ourselves, guys. I've always identified as somebody very progressive, but I've come to realize that certain movements that are getting a lot of attention, and again, I don't want to risk being politically incorrect and naming any of them. You can come to your own conclusions. But when certain movements are getting a lot of media attention and a lot of celebrity endorsements, you gotta wonder who's behind these narratives and what is the end goal. So in light of all of this, and in light of the circus that is continuing to be played for us by the media with the stamp of approval of our politicians, those of us who have, who still have critical thinking, those of us with eyes to see and brains to think, I think we would be well served to, once again, step back a little bit, see who's running the show and what is the end goal. So don't fall for it. As I said in my last video, the whole race baiting thing, we're very fortunate, especially in Canada. We really are in one of the most tolerant nations of the world, especially in here in the Toronto area. I mean, I feel extremely blessed, for the past 24 years to live in probably the most multicultural city in the world and enjoying the diversity of cultures, of foods. I have had and continue to have friends from a variety of different cultures, and I absolutely love it. So now, is there systemic racism? Again, I'm not a person of color, and I recognize, having spoken to people of color, that there are certain issues. There are prejudices. Are they completely at the societal level, or are they individuals seeing the world through their own lens and coming to their own conclusions and making their own often flawed judgments? Can we paint everybody with the same brush and say, we have systemic racism in Canada? Of all places, I don't know. I don't know if I can buy that narrative. And even if that were the case, why is it all of a sudden, why is this topic all of a sudden getting all the attention? We've almost forgotten about this whole COVID narrative that was being pushed to such an extent in the days up until, in the days leading up to now, in the literally 3 months leading up to now. We've been told there's this big monster out there, COVID, that's gonna kill everybody, and You got to stay locked up in your homes. And all of a sudden now we've got protests of thousands of people in the streets. And all of a sudden those protests are being, justified and almost promoted by our media and our government representatives. For Mr. Trudeau to go and do a photo op with the BLM protesters while up until now he's been cooped up in his cottage, refusing to even interact with any kind of independent media. People simply asking questions, as we should be. It's a disgrace. It's just, it's a shame. Canada has sold out to the globalists. I don't know if there are many people in the world that, I don't know what places in the world are even free anymore, guys, at this point, honestly. Because as you can see very well, the same agenda is being played out pretty much everywhere in the world. Oh, apparently Belarus and Tanzania, those are two countries where, the leadership is apparently not owned or not owned yet. I'm almost venting here, guys. But you know what? Here's what I'm thinking. So, number one, let's not fall victim to their orchestrated narratives that are meant to divide and conquer. Let's not fall prey to that. We can do better than that. We are smarter than that. We don't need to buy into their divide and conquer narratives, guys. The real perpetrators of the crimes are not ordinary citizens like you and I. Nope. The puppet masters that are currently imposing this top-down agenda on all of us. Oh man, there's somebody doing some sanitation. Oh Lord, smells like hell. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm in High Park and some guy, I guess he's just removing graffiti, but whatever they were using, it smelled like hell. Oh my God. So, once again, don't fall for their divisive narratives. We are not the enemy. We the people are not the enemy. And on the contrary, if we even realize how powerful we are together and we actually stood united against the actual oppressors that are really trying to impose a lot of evil on all of us, from their insane social distancing measures and this whole COVID hoax, because that's what I've come to believe it is. You can come to your own conclusions. I'm not telling any of you what to think. I'm just expressing my own views. And the reason I am expressing my views, guys, is because I know there's a lot of insanity out there, and thinking people need to know that you are not alone. You are not alone. You have every right to question this narrative that's being pushed on us, one after the other. I mean, it was like, first it was COVID. Now we've got the whole BLM movement, orchestrated movement. And then they've already advertised that they're going to give us a second wave in the fall. So get ready, make your plans. What can I say? Do as you can. As some of you know, I started a weekly webinar series all about financial matters. It's called Money Matters. And because I feel that we need to focus on what we can do versus what we cannot. And despite what they're trying to tell us, well, despite their divide and conquer narratives, I think there's still enough thinking people on this planet that are realizing, you know what, we're being sold a pack of lies, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to buy it. They can keep it, right? The more people they can fool into their orchestrated narratives, the more control they have of the overall population. My goal, my aspiration in doing these videos is that we awake enough people, that we reach a critical mass of awake, empowered individuals that are simply going to say no to these plans that they have for us. We're going to say no energetically. We're going to say no in various ways. Yesterday I went to pick up some my son's belongings from his school, which had been closed for the past, I guess, going on 3 months now. And thank you. And I'm being told, oh, you need to put hand sanitizer on. I was like, no, thank you. I was like, oh, it's not an option. I'm like, excuse me? You're telling me to put cancer-causing compounds on my skin? I don't think so. I'm not putting that on. Do you have gloves? I said. They had gloves. It's, that in itself is a disgrace that I would have to freaking put on gloves to get into my son's school. And, of course, all the school staff is wearing masks. I told them, you don't need those either. You know that. This is all a hoax. And they're like, oh, it's just orders from the ministry. I was like, so you're just order followers. You're just going to do as you're told. You're not going to question anything, right? This is bullshit, I said to them. I'm not bringing my son back to a school where he's going to have to put hand sanitizer on to go to school. I'm not doing that. Anyway, as I was leaving some of the school, because I pretty much ranted at them. I was like, you're just following orders. You're not, use your brain. You're not a robot. So as I was going out, some of the school staff that was there were very apologetic. It's like, I know, you're right. I know, you're right. But I don't know what their concern is, that they might lose their jobs. They're going to lose their jobs anyway, the way schools are going. How many parents do you think are going to put their kids in a socially distanced, fully sanitized school environment? Like, what kind of parent would you have to do that to your kid? I'm sorry, guys. Olvídate, forget it. Sorry, I know I'm just ranting because I'm not putting up with this. I'm not gonna, to the extent of my abilities, I will continue to say no. I will continue to take a stand for what is right. And speaking of that, I don't know if you guys know, there is a project. There's a Facebook group that got formed. It's called Glorious and Free, and I wanted to bring your attention to this initiative. The idea is, it's a democratic movement of citizens, and what we're trying to do is flood our government representatives with a letter campaign starting next week. We're talking about sending in thousands of actual physical letters, voicing our concerns, telling them that we're not okay with everything they've been doing, and for whatever it's worth. Some people may feel so resigned in this whole situation that they may feel that it's pointless anyway. Why do anything? Well, what are you going to do? You're just going to go and die? What are you going to do? You're not going to take a stand for your children's future? You're not going to take a stand for freedom, for justice? You're just going to say, well, it's pointless anyway. That's exactly what they want us to do. Our passivity is what they want. Our passivity enables them to continue forwarding their evil agendas. We cannot remain passive. Do what you can. We may not be able to do everything, but you can do some things. You can give out some flyers. I picked up a ton of flyers at our last Saturday's freedom gathering, all about how wearing a mask is actually terrible for your health, and that you do not have to comply with those types of regulations that can literally, especially there are people out there that have genuine health concerns. But even if you didn't, why would you put a mask on that inhibits your oxygen absorption? You're breathing in, your own carbon dioxide and bacteria that gathers on the mask. That seems like a great idea for the for your health, right? No, thank you. And now they want to make that mandatory on public transit? Such a disgrace. And how brainwashed people are to support such an idea. Dios mío. By the way, one last thing I wanted to say. Well, not one last thing. So let's finish the idea of the Glorious and Free letter campaign. You're welcome to join the Facebook group. We're going to be sending physical letters to our elective representatives, whether it's provincial, municipal, the office of the premier, whatever politicians you want to send letters to. The more letters they get, the better it will be. Physical letters, because our emails, I've sent emails, and I know many of you have, and we're not getting any responses other than the autoresponder. So much for that. So we're gonna do that for whatever it's worth. In my view, at the very least, they're gonna know that the people are not for them. You've lost the confidence of the people. You are doing things that we do not agree with. And they need to be told to their face, you're just a pawn of the state. You're a pawn of the globalists. You're not for the people. You are not representing us. We do not want these tyrannical measures that go against our basic human rights. No, thank you. Oh my God. Okay, so the letter campaign, please do what you can. It doesn't have to be a super long letter. Just your words. There are some form letters provided by the group. I'm sure they are. At the very least, I don't know. But at the very least, yeah, do what you can. That's one initiative that many of us could get behind. It doesn't take that much effort. It'll cost you a few dollars. Okay. And then one more thing I wanted to say about this whole defund the police story that's being pushed right now. It sounds very noble, right? It sounds like a noble idea. It's not. And how I know that it's not is because, you know, they're not just going to get rid of the police and leave a void in its absence, okay? Think for yourselves, people. When the Yellow Vest protests were happening in France, we're talking about large-scale protests that were taking place, thousands of people. I've listened to testimonials from people that were on the front lines and who were witnessing large-scale police brutality. People have been maimed and killed by the police. But what's even more disturbing is that it was not the actual French police that was perpetrating that violence and those atrocities. What people were reporting were that they were seeing what appeared to be mercenaries. These were people, yes, Christine, for sure. These were mercenaries. These were dressed in black, no name tags, dressed in full-out riot gear, speaking foreign languages. What police force was this? This was not the French police. This was very likely the UN police force. And if you think that by defunding your local police department, that's gonna get rid of police violence and injustices, if you think that replacing it by a globalist police, oh my God, if you think that's the solution, I feel sorry for you. That is definitely not the solution. More globalist control, more totalitarian top-down control, perhaps aided by a little AI. I mean, they already have dog-like robots in Singapore patrolling the parks, telling people to keep their social distance. I have no words. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for any of this. One thing about the police forces, at least in the US, one thing I should tell you is I've watched at least 2 videos by 2 different sheriffs, 2 or 3 different sheriff departments, where the sheriff was saying, we are not going to enforce unconstitutional laws. We are not going to prosecute people for trying to earn a living. Okay? The office of the sheriffs, at least in the United States, still has the power to actually do the right thing, to take a stand for people. Whereas if you've got the top-down globalist police, who's going to take a stand for the people in that case? I want to end this video because I feel it's getting too long. Yesterday I shared a video there was a clip in it from Brazil's president Bolsonaro, who was not mincing words. He had some very strong words to say about the corrupt local mayors and governors that were arresting and harassing their own people for trying to earn a living and put food on the table for their families. And what he said, he was urging his, I guess, cabinet members to sign a resolution to arm the Brazilian people. He said, I want every man and woman in this country to have a gun because unarmed people will never be enslaved. And again, I don't know anything about this man other than I agree with that statement. Meanwhile, our traitor PM, what is he doing? He's voting to take away our guns. So what? So that only the state can have guns and the rest of the citizens, we can't defend ourselves? We just have to do as told or else? again, I don't want to make this much longer. It warmed my heart in recent days to see armed Americans protecting their neighborhoods, protecting their local businesses, taking a stand in their own neighborhoods, in their own communities, against the Antifa looters and rioters that were there to literally destroy neighborhoods and businesses. And you know what? Antifa just walked by. They're not gonna dare mess with people that are standing in their power, and especially people who are armed. Anyway, I know I'm ranting. I think the ultimate solution is, once again, is that we stand in our power as citizens, as human beings. We stand in our power against the oppressors. We stand in our power. We stand our ground energetically, physically, but especially energetically. Stand your ground. Stand in your power. And I don't know how many of you follow Abraham Hicks or know about Abraham Hicks' law of attraction teachings. One thing I've always loved about Esther and Abraham is that they say one who is connected to source is 1,000 times more powerful than others who are not. Or in other words, vibrationally, a person who is connected to source is more powerful than thousands who are not. More powerful than thousands who are not. I'm sorry to hear that, Nick. So that is the solution. The solution is that we all stand in our power. We connect to source, spiritual essence, whatever you want to call it, God, whatever you want to call it. And stand strong. Stand strong, and don't let the movie distract you. Don't let the movie distract you. The movie that's being played on our screens, and again, all those movie characters, unfortunately, that's what they're becoming. These people that are falling for the globalist agendas, and they're playing the little roles in these orchestrated insanity. They're among the thousands that are not truly empowered, unfortunately. They don't have the power. We have the power. Us who are awake, who are seeing what's actually happening behind the scenes. Back off. Back off. Humanity killers, back off. Back off. You're not gonna overstep our energetic boundary that we're putting against our planet, around humanity. And I can only hope and pray that videos like this are gonna help awaken our brothers and sisters who are still falling for these media promoted narratives. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching and listening. Thank you for your support in doing whatever you can do to support the future of humanity in the most positive way. And I hope to see some of you at our Freedom Gathering tomorrow in Toronto at Queen's Park from 12 to 3 p.m. We will be there, continuing to stand for our freedoms and continuing to enjoy normal human interactions with our fellow human beings. Thank you very much. Have an awesome weekend. Much love. Blessings.